to the maritime calculations tutorials. So here is our part 2 of stowing. So this is our cargo planning video part 2. So today's focus will be on weight, 2 ports, above deck, below deck, and labeling. And you see that picture right there in the corner? That is what we're trying to avoid. Please ensure that you have watched the previous video to get familiar with the concept of stowing each container. A factor to consider when stowing is the stack weight. Weight distribution is very important when stowing. We must ensure that we maintain the stack weight and the port side and the starboard side are balanced. When stowing below deck, please be reminded that there are restrictions as it relates to stowing high cube containers and out of gauge containers due to the hatch cover. When stowing for 2 ports, please use the first in last out approach. The containers for the port that the ship will be going first, stow it last, and the containers for the port that the ship will be going last, stow it first. We use this approach to avoid rehandling. Today we're gonna do a question together. I'm gonna read through the question and then attempt the question. The ship specifications. So the specifications of the ship are as follows. No reefer plugs are in the hatch. Reefer units cannot be loaded beyond the 2nd tier. The maximum weight for each cell or column below deck is 50 tons and the maximum weight for each position column on deck is 100 tons. Basically what this is saying is that the reefer units cannot be loaded beyond the 2nd tier above deck, right? Your reefer units must be stored above deck in tier 82 and 84. Anything above that is incorrect. Anything below that is incorrect. Reason for that is because the hatch cover has reefer plugs. Even though the question says that there are no reefer plugs in the hatch, still store your reefer containers above deck in those 2 tiers, 82 and 84. So the maximum weight for each cell below deck is 50 tons and the maximum weight for each position above deck is 100 tons. So basically they're talking about the stack weight, right? So for each row you must not exceed the amount of 50 tons below deck, and for each row above deck you must not exceed the amount of 100 tons above deck. So it can be less, but it cannot be more. So in the previous video we did mention how to stow the HC, the DV, the OT, the RC and the OOG, so go and watch that video to get the concept. So what we're gonna prepare a pre-stow plan. So it is very important to try to secure as much marks as possible. So what I want for you guys to do is label your bays, your rows and your tiers. You get marks for that. Also plan the bay properly so that no restore or rehandling of cargo is required. Write the container numbers in the bay position, ensuring that the number, size, type, weight, and port of destination are reflected. Port Angel is the first port of destination and Port Willis is the 2nd port of destination. So what we're going to do for this question is to use the first in, last out approach, right? Since as we will be going to Port Willis 2nd, we will store that first. And then because we're going to Port Angel first, we will store that last. Why? We would like to avoid rehandling. We cannot move one container for a different port just to take up one if we come off. You understand me? So what we're gonna do is this. So I took the time out to video myself labeling my rows and tiers. So I do expect you guys to do the same. Do that first, because time can run out on you and you don't get to finish store your ship. But the teacher would probably look at the pre-store plan to say, okay, this person was heading in the right direction. So I took the time out, so I do expect you guys to label. So I have identified my forward and my aft. Remember, whatever is stored on the forward must be represented on the aft, right? So if you store a 40-foot container, you must put an X in the same slot on the aft to make sure that you show that that spot is filled. If you store a 20-foot container on the forward, make sure that another 20-foot container is in the same slot on the aft. Please remember that everyone stores differently, so no two persons will have the same layout of the bay plan, the pre-stow plan, right? So as long as you follow the concept for stowing each container and you maintain the stock weight, you should be fine. So this is my way of doing this question. So I'm going to show you how I started. In truth and in fact, stowing takes a lot of reasoning. So I did not have no apparent reason why I started in the middle or why I started with those 4 specific containers, but this is what I did. So I stored 4 20-foot containers weighing 10 tons, right? So when I add all of them, it's gonna come up to 40 tons. I have space for 10 more tons, but for now I'm just gonna store around it. Before I did that, I add up all the 20-foot containers for Port Willis and subtracted the 40 tons that I already stored, and I got 85. So 85 divided by 2 would have given me 42 point something. So what I did was rounded it off to 42 and 43. So next I picked out what could give me 42 and what could give me 43. So the ones with the dots beside it could give me 42, and the ones with the ticks beside it could give me 43. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to apply it onto my my pre-stow plan. So for each container, I will have the port of destination, the weight, and the type of container in the pre-stow. Right, here's a closer look at my 4 20-foots that I stored weighing 40 tons. So because I already used the dots and ticks to identify what goes on each side, I'm just gonna put in the 20-foot containers, the rest of the 20-foot containers. So what I'm doing now is to add all the weight for the containers that are currently stored, right? So I'm trying to maintain the stock weight and to ensure that the ship is balanced, right? So on one side we would get 42 and the other side we will get 43, right? So we are off by one, which is still good because we can be off by up to 5 tons. What you need to ask yourself now is, if I put a container on this side, how much will I need to put on the other side to make it balanced, right? So in this case, I put a DV, a 14-ton DV on one side, right? And then I put a 15-foot DV on the other side. So when I add the 15 to the 42, right, I'm gonna get 57 on one side, and when I add the 43 plus the 14, I'm gonna get 57 on the other side. So it is gonna be balanced. You're gonna have 57, 57. Now if I put a 8C container weighing 19 tons on this side, right, so that container is going to Port Willis. So when I add the 19 to the 14, I'm gonna get about 33, right? So how much would I need on the other side to make it balanced? So I'm gonna put a DV weighing 20 tons, right? So 15 plus 20 give us 35. So my little rough work is at the side. It's not crucial to the question itself, but I prefer to use it to monitor my stock weight and the balance with the port side and the starboard side. So I'm gonna add my 19 tons to my 57. And I'm gonna get 76. And I'm gonna add my 20 tons to my 57. And I got 77. So it's still off by one, but we still have room for improvements. Don't forget to mark the aft for every slot that you use, right? So let's move on now. So I'm gonna add 8C going to Port Willis with 17 tons, sorry, right? 33 plus 17 give me 50, right? I'm gonna add my 17 to my rough work because I'd like to keep track. And I would have gotten 93. No, what's the question you ask? How much do you need on the other side to make it close enough to 50, to make it even? So I'm gonna put a DV right there for Port Willis weighing 14 tons. 14 plus 35 gives us 49, right? 49 to 50, that's close enough. And I'm adding to my rough work. So it's off by 2, and we have about, how many containers? We have more containers to store, right? So I think there's one weighing 8 tons and another weighing about 6. So what I'm going to do now, put a DV right there for Port Willis that weighs 8 tons, and we got 50, right? Adding to my rough work, I got 99. And we have another container which is a DV weighing 6 tons. How fortunate are we? 6 plus to 43 give us 49, and we are balanced. We have 99 on one side and 99 on the other side. So we are balanced below deck. Even though below deck is currently balanced, we still have more containers for Port Willis. So we have 2 reefer containers that weighs the same amount, which is 26 tons. So what I'm doing now is to put 1 reefer container on this side and the other on the other side to maintain the balance. So it's gonna be like the 99 plus the 26, but we know it's still even because it's the same amount on each side. So for rough work purposes, I'm gonna bring the 99 a little bit closer, right? So now what I'm gonna do is to represent on the half. So I'm gonna put an X there and an X there to show that it has been filled. So personally for me, I prefer to store the rest of the containers. Remember that we have an OT, so I prefer to store the rest of the containers in the 00 row, right? So I'm gonna put a DV right there. The DV weighs 17 tons. I'm gonna put another DV there which weighs 18 tons, and I'm gonna put the OT, which is the open top container, which weighs 18 tons again. Now I'm gonna add up everything in that row. So 18 plus 18 plus 17 equals 53, right? So we know that we cannot store anything else in that row because we don't have any space for it. It is within the stock weight. Stock weight for above deck is 100, so we're good. So that's me just trying to mark off the Port Willis containers. We are balanced still, we're good. It's very important to be balanced below deck because we're sure that when the containers for Port Angel come off that ship, then the ship can safely travel to its destination. Now, these are the 20-foot containers for Port Angel, right? You notice that there are 2 14s and 2 20s. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put 1 14 on one side, the other 14 on the other side, 1 12 on one side and the other 12 on one side, and then I guess I'll just decide what to put, which container to put on which side based on my working out or my judgment for the remaining 20-foot containers. So just stay tuned. Now it's time for me to store my 20-foot containers for Port Angel, right? So I labeled it PA, and this is a 12-ton 20-foot container. This right here is a 14-ton 20-foot container. This over here is a 20-foot container weighing 12 tons. And the other one is a 20-foot container weighing 14 tons, right? Remember, we have 12 plus 14 gives us 26. 12 plus 14 gives us 26. Now remember, we have 2 more 20-foot containers to store. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm gonna put both of them on one side. So I'm gonna put a 20-foot container right here and another 20-foot in the same slot on the forward. Alright, so one will weigh 16 and one will weigh 18. So when I add the 18 plus the 16, I will get 34, I believe. Yes, when I add both of them, I'll get 34. Right, so what I need to do now is to look into the 40-foot container, because we have already stored all the 20 foot. Right, so we need to know how much we need to move on. So what I'm doing now, I'm just adding my rough work section. So it's gonna be 151 and 151 plus that 34 that we just stored, right? So what we know that we need 34 on the other side. We need 34 on the other side. So what we're gonna do is to put 2 of the 40-foot containers. So we're gonna put a 8C for 20 tons and a DV for 14 tons to make up the 34, so we can make it even, right? So 20 plus 14 gives us 34, right? So we're pretty much doing well right now. We are balanced. Putting the 34 on that side, and we'll get 185. Now it's time to put the X on the aft. Let us see what we got. When labeling a 40-foot container, it should have the port of destination, the container number, the type, size, and weight of the container, and the location of the container, which is the bay, row, and tier. The bay number on a 40-foot container must always be an even number, right? The rows and tiers depends on where you store that container on the prestow plan. So the rows and tiers helps to identify the location of the container. The only difference when labeling a 20-foot container is the bay number. The bay number must be the odd number, right? So if you store, in this case, if you store a 20-foot container on the forward, the bay number will be 21. And if you store a 20-foot on the aft, the bay number would be 23. Remember, the bay, rows, and tiers helps to identify the location of the container.